All right, of course, all guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 brought to us by the official beer of the program, Johnny Cuba. You can pick up a six-pack of Johnny Cuba, your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. Always drink responsibly. And, of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. Our pal is CBS Sports Fantasy Football expert, Jamey Eisenberg. Week 16 gets going tonight. We are right smack in our fantasy football playoffs. So everybody out there is counting on you, Jamey. First up, how you doing this morning? Everything okay?
Everything is great. Looking forward to tonight's game. Should be a fun weekend of football, and good to talk to you as always.
Are you surprised? Give me some thoughts here. So the big news over the last couple of days was Aaron Rodgers essentially putting an end to the season-long drama of him returning early from an Achilles injury. What did you make of him essentially doing a 180 where he's been telling us he's going to return early, and then just 5 days before that supposed return date, he tells everybody finally he's not even close, probably a month away?
Well, I'm sure he likes the drama, so let's not overstate the obvious here about who he is and who he has been, especially in the latter stages of his career. I think part of it though is going through the rehab process. Injuries are tricky. You never know if he felt better a month ago and thought, okay, this is trending in the right direction. And then when he's out on the football field, it doesn't feel right. And why would you risk going out there behind that offensive line with a team that's not going anywhere if you're not at 100% just because you want to play? So, yes, I'm sure there was a lot of look at me. And then, okay, now you don't have to look at me anymore. But also, I'm sure there's part of just the medical part of this that he was hoping to be back out there. He was hoping the team was going to be better. He was hoping he have a chance to maybe, help them sneak into the playoffs. And now that that's unrealistic, okay, why risk it when you only have the potential downfall of hurting yourself for next season?
So as far as tonight's game is concerned, tonight we got a game that matters tonight, all right? This is a game that certainly has playoff implications for both teams, Saints and Rams. Rams currently hold the final playoff spot. The Saints are still in play in the NFC South to try and win that division. What do we like tonight?
We like a lot. This is a fun fantasy game if everything comes to, pass in terms of everybody being at their best. Derek Carr's coming off 5 touchdowns in his last 2 games, his best performance of the season last week. He did that without Chris Olave. Olave is expected to play tonight, so I like his situation. Obviously, the 2 running backs are playing great, Alvin Kamara and Kyren Williams. Williams has been, arguably the best story for fantasy managers this year, him and Raheem Mostert, just in what they've been able to do based on where you drafted them, or in the case of Kyren Williams, picked them up off the waiver wire. The receiving core for the Rams is finally looking, at its best. So, yeah, I'm excited about Kamara and Kyren Williams in the game tonight. I think we're going to see great performances from both of these teams. So should be fun to see these 2 offenses. Again, hopefully they both come to play their best football.
Jamey, how about the MVP conversation? It's a really interesting year for that because it feels like every single week we have a new candidate. And I feel like last week Dak Prescott was the guy, and then he has the performance that he had against Buffalo. Who's at the top of the MVP conversation now this week?
Well, I think we're going to get, a clear answer in the head-to-head game between Baltimore and San Francisco. So you have the 2 guys for the 49ers, which may hurt themselves if they're going to split votes in some capacity, and Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy. And you have Lamar Jackson, who, at this point, the Ravens are the 1 seed in the AFC. So it's hard to overlook, what he's done and clearly what the team has done. I don't think Dak is completely out of the race if he has a strong game or, strong finish. Jalen Hurts, I think, could still put himself back into play. Obviously, the Tyreek Hill narrative is fun now. I think Tua has kind of fallen out of the race just based on how things have unfolded for him. But, if Tyreek can get to the 2,000-yard mark still, he's going to be right there also. So you're kind of getting to see I think a clear-cut 4 or 5. Maybe there's an outside chance of Josh Allen putting himself in the race just based on how the Bills season may finish. But, he may have done a little bit too much harm with how he performed earlier this season. And you can never rule out Patrick Mahomes. But I think the winner of the 49ers-Ravens game will sort of, I think, dictate who is the MVP leader. And it would not be surprising if it's one of the 49ers guys.
All right, before we talk about the actual game, Dolphins and Cowboys, how do you see the remainder of this season playing out for the Dolphins? Final 3 games here. Very, very difficult schedule. AFC East is obviously still on the line. So is number 1 in the AFC overall. That includes a game at Baltimore in a couple weeks. How do you see the remainder of this season playing out for the Dolphins?
I think the Dolphins go 1-1 in their next two. I think they beat the Cowboys and probably lose to Baltimore. Baltimore most likely coming off a loss at San Francisco. So back in their building, I think they get refocused and try and still lock up the 1 seed in the AFC. And then it comes down to that game in Buffalo, because I don't think Buffalo's losing their next two, against the Chargers and the Patriots. So, not I think something a lot of people thought with how the previous few weeks had looked, that Titans loss is going to loom large if the Dolphins end up losing to Buffalo and losing 2 or at least 3 of their next 3. But look, if Miami can win out, you just know what the narrative has been. They haven't been able to beat a good team yet. And so they have 3 of them lined up right in a row. So I do think that they beat Dallas. That Baltimore one is the toughest one to me, just because it's, on the road against a really good team. And then if everybody's healthy, or at least as healthy as they can be, they should be able to beat Buffalo in their building. But look, injuries are really playing a part right now for a lot of teams. San Francisco, for example, had their injury situation when they lost those 3 games with Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel banged up. You're seeing Buffalo sort of manage through their injuries right now a little bit. They got through the game last week with Micah Hyde not being there and Epineza. The Dolphins right now are in the middle of it, losing, a couple key guys on defense with Jalen Phillips and Javon Holland coming back. And then, the offensive line woes right now are really problematic. So that's going to be the biggest key, I think, for them is, can they protect Tua? Can they still run the ball? Can Tyreek get back to being Tyreek? They have everything in front of them that should allow them to be the best team in the AFC and still maybe have a chance at the 1 seed.
So let's talk about the game. What do we like?
I think it's going to be a fun one. The Cowboys right now have a key injury on their defensive line. The name is escaping me right now, but it really showed up in their run defense in terms of how James Cook operated. So I think the Dolphins should be able to run the ball like they have been. Raheem Mostert clearly been fantastic, chasing or competing with Christian McCaffrey for the touchdown lead, both at 20 right now going into the week. So Mostert should have a big day, again, if they're still banged up defensively. And then does Tyreek Hill come back and play at 100%? I think the fact that they held him out last week, proved to be the right decision because of how they won that game against the Jets. Didn't need him. So if you get him at 100%, Tyreek should be a star. Obviously, Jalen Waddle has to prove that he can do what he did last week consistently with Tyreek on the field. The fun thing that we've seen from the Cowboys defense, while Deron Bland's had a huge year in terms of interceptions, he's also the guy that you pick on because you don't want to throw at Stephon Gilmore's if you don't have to. So I think that's the direction the Dolphins will attack if they see Bland lined up on Tyreek or Waddle, or get one of those guys in motion with him on him. That's the spot that Tua will have some success throwing on. So Tua should be great. Dak should be great. He's been fantastic prior to last week. I think he'll bounce back. Tony Pollard still in play as a number 2 running back. And then you have arguably the 2 best fantasy wide receivers going head to head, because CeeDee Lamb, what he's done in the second half of the season has been phenomenal, especially with Justin Jefferson hurt. So should be fun to see those 2 guys operate as well.
All right, Jamey, give me some sneaky good plays throughout the weekend.
Yeah, there's a handful of quarterbacks. The 3 that top the list for me. Baker Mayfield's been great the last 2 games, over 60 fantasy points in his last 2 matchups. And he has a great matchup this week against Jacksonville. So I like him a lot. Joe Flacco, 3 straight games, over 20 fantasy points. Good matchup against the Texans. They've been bad against quarterbacks lately. And then Nick Mullins came back, or started last week for the first time. 21 fantasy points, coincided with Justin Jefferson coming back. The way to beat the Lions, or at least have success against the Lions, is through the air. So Mullins should be, a decent plug and play at the quarterback spot. Running backs a little bit tougher to find guys off the waiver wire or some sneaky plays, but I do think this could be actually a good week for Najee Harris. I know he's been tough to trust, but DJ Reader, big run stuffer for the Bengals. He's now out for the season. Najee's got a good history against Cincinnati. Scored against them earlier, so not bad to trust him. Love Ken Walker this week. He's my start of the week. So coming off a good game last week against Philadelphia. Love the setup against the Titans. They're missing their best run stuffer in Jeffrey Simmons. We saw that with the Dolphins, for example. So Walker's in play here if you're looking for a guy that's been sort of a fringe starter. And then wide receiver, it's going to be, I think, a pretty good week at that position. Jordan Addison should be good. We saw him score last week. Like the setup for him. Deontay Johnson scored 3 touchdowns in a row, which was rare. Did score it all last year, if you remember. So I like the setup there for him. And if you need a plug and play, a guy that's off the waiver wire, Christian Watson and Jaden Reed are both banged up for the Packers. Dontavian Wicks is coming off a 6-catch, 97-yard game last week for Green Bay. Tough matchup against the Panthers, but a guy that's available almost everywhere you can plug in your lineup.
Excellent job, Jamey. Tell everybody how they can hear you leading up to tonight's game and, of course, the games this weekend.
Check us out, CBS Sports HQ. You can check out our YouTube, our podcast, which is all available on our YouTube page as well. Fantasy Football Today is where you find that. And then you can always follow me on Twitter or just check out our website, cbssports.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamey. We'll talk next week, man.
You got it, man. Take care.
See ya.